Hello and welcome to Flying Wombat TV. This is normally the channel about beer, banter and bloody good times, but today we're taking a slight left turn because it is really cold in Australia right now because we're in the middle of our winter, so I decided to bring out a winter classic. Today we are going to be making mulled wine. So get out your long johns and get your cinnamon sticks because it's time to get nice and toasty by the fire. Let's talk ingredients. Now we're going to start with the booze because that's the beating heart of what we're working with today. Starting with the wine. The wine that you're going to want to choose should be a slightly softer varietal. It should be a little more mellow. You don't want something that's super balls to the wall, spicy or woody or earthy. So rule out things like Shirazes, Cab Savs, etc. You want to use something more like a Pinot Noir or in this case a Merlot. You want a softer wine that's going to provide the backbone of the flavor and kind of the majority of the booze and the aromatics, but you want it to play a backseat role. You really want the spices to be the star of the show. So in this case, we have a very cheap $10 bottle from South Australia because you don't need an expensive bottle to make a spiced wine. You're gonna be simmering it with a bunch of spices and sweeteners and everything. They're gonna dominate the palate and the mouthfeel. Just choose something that you would be happy to cook with. Think about it that way. Now, rum, the big stuff. In this case, I'm gonna be using a Jamaican pot-stilled rum from Appleton Estate. You don't need to use rum though. This one is quite dense and quite heavy. There's a lot of big molasses flavors and dense, kind of rich, dark caramel and kind of burnt tobacco kind of stuff going on. You don't necessarily need that. You could go something like a brandy that's much softer, sweeter in some cases, and a little easier on the palate. I like this because I like big, heavy, punchy stuff in my spiced wine, but go with the kind of spirit that you prefer to drink. Now, spices. Talking spices. Now, from left to right on screen, we are going to be starting with cloves. I'm using 10 cloves in this particular mulled wine. If you are not so partial to big, heavy spiced flavors, I would reduce the cloves maybe to like 6 or 7, but I like it very robust, so 10 cloves it is for me. Over here, this is my own special ingredient that not a ton of spiced wines use, but I really like it. This is elderberries, in this case dried elderberries, and I find that these add a really cool blueberry through to blackcurrant, through to tobacco kind of aroma and flavor to the final product. I really like that in a winter warmer. So I'm gonna be using half a tablespoon of those. Then we have star anise, 2 whole star anise. This is gonna add almost a bit of a licorice kind of flavor and then other kind of earthy flavors along that kind of vibe. I am not super big on licorice, so 2 is plenty for me, but if you like those kinds of flavors, maybe go another half or another whole star anise on that one. Next up, we are gonna be working with 2 cinnamon sticks. One of them is going to be reserved for decoration afterwards in the glass, but 2 sticks is plenty. If you really like the flavor of cinnamon, maybe go another half or another 1 in this particular case. Now, fruits. We are working with oranges. You could use lemons. I prefer oranges. It provides more of like a fruity citrus rather than an acidic citrus. And you could also peel these and just use the outer peel, which is going to contain the majority of the orange zesty flavor. If you avoid the pith, you'll have less bitterness, but I don't mind a bit of bitterness. So I'm just going to do thin-ish slices of 1 whole orange and throw it into the pot. I've reserved a second orange for a pretty slice in the glass at the end of this video. Now, over on the far left, we have honey. Well, my left anyway. So you could use honey, you could use sugar, you could use maple syrup. I like honey, it's my personal preference. So I'm gonna be going 5 big heaped tablespoons of honey because I like my mulled wine to be nice and sweet to combat all the spices that I'm throwing into it. Now, just taste to palate here. So do as much sweetness as you want. Start with 1 scoop at a time until you've hit the sweetness that you like. I like mine with about 4 to 5 big scoops. Let's get started, shall we? This video is proudly brought to you by iGulu. So they are our new partners in the beer space and they make these awesome machines that allow you to ferment, temperature control and ferment under pressure, all in the one vessel and then dispense beer out of it at the end. Kind of like a coffee machine, but for making beer, which is pretty cool. You've got a whole bunch of different recipe kits to choose from on the website. I'll link it down below. And you can also use our custom code Flying Wombat, all one word, to get $100 off your next order today. Now, back to the video. Let's start adding stuff into the pot and we may as well get our liquids in there first so we can start warming up everything. Now, this is a liter bottle of wine, by the way. I should have mentioned that before. I didn't realize it was a liter bottle when I bought it. I would normally use a 750, and I've kind of scaled, no, I haven't really. This is the kind of recipe I'd use for a 750 bottle. So buy a 750 bottle. But the interesting thing about making mulled wine though, is that you can make less ingredients go further. Essentially, once all the stuff's in the pot, the longer you simmer everything, the more flavor you'll extract from all the spices. So if you want to be kind of thrifty, you can go with less spices and just simmer for longer. It's just up to you how much patience you have. And I'm going to be going with 1/2 cup of rum because I like my mulled wine nice and boozy. Let's add some spices. Now, let's just throw all, which one is the prettiest cinnamon stick to you? Which one do you think? I reckon maybe the middle one is the prettiest. Right, these ones can go in, as can all of our cloves, all of our elderberries, and our star anise. Now, let's let the pot start to warm up. In the meantime, what I can do is slice up an orange. So I'm gonna cut off the very end bits because I don't want the green stuff going in and adding a weird astringency. And then as for the rest, as I mentioned before, it's just kind of thin-ish slices. They don't need to be super thin. You don't really want a bunch of fibrous stuff falling apart. You don't want it super thick or you're just kind of losing extraction. I don't know, something in the middle. I realized I was gonna look up at the camera and that might be a little bit silly while I'm chopping things because I'm not a professional chef and I will lose a finger. And that's not good YouTube.
Maybe it is.
Or maybe it is. Maybe that's how we actually get really popular. I'll chop off my finger. There we go. And that orange goes in. Now, last ingredient is the honey. I'm going with 5 heaped teaspoons today because it's a liter bottle of wine. If it was a regular 750, I'd probably go more like 4. But again, it just depends how much of a sweet tooth you have. I love that this honey is like crystallized because it's so cold in here. So it means that I can actually really easily lump it off. And as I'm saying it, I'm starting to wonder if 5 is a bit much.
Can't you add more later?
I can add more later. So let's start with 4. Let's go with 4 and see what we think. God, that honey's good. Honey's just so good. I just love honey. Now, we're gonna simmer this for, I'm gonna say 20 minutes to start with, then I'll take a little taste test. But the important thing to keep in note of here is we don't want to boil it. The goal is to simmer. So alcohol boils off into vapor at 78 degrees Celsius. That's the boiling point of pure ethanol. Now, because there's other things in here like other water and juices and sugars and what have you, it's gonna be a little bit higher than that because chemistry and science, but we still don't want to push those boundaries. So I would say get the temperature up to maybe around 70-ish degrees. Use a thermometer to kind of keep tabs on it. Don't let it get too high over that or you're just going to start losing alcohol. So let's let this simmer for a little bit and I'll come back to you when we're ready to taste. And now for the big reveal. There we have it. So the one thing that we can only describe to you and you guys can't experience is just how incredibly delightful it smells in here right now. It's just wafts of like red wine and spices and honey and sweetness kind of going all in the air. And we now have a beautiful glass of mulled wine at the end of all of this. So that was very easy. That was a 25-minute simmer. If you like it spicier, simmer a little bit longer. If you like it less so, back it off a little bit. You've got a lot to play with just with the amount of time that you guys have this simmering. And at the end of it, you've got an incredibly easy and a delicious glass of spiced mulled wine. It's so freaking good. 4 tablespoons of the honey was enough. No more. That was plenty. And that is freaking delicious. And if you don't finish it all in the one night, whack it back in the bottle. You can't possibly oxidize it any more than you already have, so this will last for a few more days than your regular wine will. It can't possibly tarnish any more beyond this point within reason. So enjoy guys, have a great winter for those of you that are in winter, and we'll catch you next time in the Wombat Kitchen. Cheers.